Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Mayor and I, with me, Lindsay Khan, and Mr. Nick Buckley, MBE, mayoral candidate, former parliamentary candidate.
Well, should we tell people why this is called The Mayor and I? Because we've got so many new followers now.
Oh, right, okay.
People won't know why it's called The Mayor and I. We started doing this January this year because I was running for Mayor of Greater Manchester against Andy Burnham. And Lindsay said, I've got a great idea. Why don't we do a podcast talking about your policies, what you're going to do, what's wrong? So we spent a couple of days thinking. We had about a dozen names to call the podcast.
Yes.
And we went with The Mayor and I, meaning the mayor, and the I meaning you. And then when I stopped running for mayor, we wanted to carry on the podcast. We thought, should we change its name? And we thought, well,
I think it had a following then, and people recognised.
Yeah, exactly. So.
But his name, it's after the King and I, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why you've
Yul
got a picture of Yul Brynner.
And I've got just about as much hair as Yul Brynner.
Yes. So just for our viewers, that isn't Nick on the picture. It's Yul Brynner.
Good point.
So the Mayor and I, and so following that, you then went to be a parliamentary candidate, and the reason I wanted to do this is because you and I had talked a lot, and I like a lot of your ideas. Don't agree with all your ideas, but I like to hear you talking. And I didn't, when I was watching your videos, I wasn't seeing people getting an insight into the way you were thinking about things, because the way you're doing it was kind of short form or whatever.
When you're talking to a camera just by yourself, it's really it's hard.
Yeah, it's very difficult. There's not many people can do that, I don't think. And I said it'd be great to get some of your ideas out so people can see them, which is how this kind of started, and it's obviously been quite successful. So.
Episode 50,
and here we are. And so yes, gentle viewers, welcome to Nick Buckley, MBE, for another episode, for episode 50 of The Mayor and I. And the good news is we didn't have to wait an hour for everything to be set up this time. Nick's on top of it now.
A lot more organised this time.
Mastered the technique.
I've had this table that way, this way, at an angle. I've had these lights on. I've had 74 different ways of setting up this room today, and I've settled on this.
Yeah, so it looks good. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm not going to do my usual talk about the football and things like that. I can't be bothered, because I think I actually, we'll talk later, but I'm actually getting a bit depressed with what's happening out there at the moment, and it's not really jollity really. Now literally just before I came out here, I'm sure you got the same alert on your phone as I did, and it was news about, let me just get his name right, apologies Nick.
Just call him the Southport scumbag.
The Southport scumbag. He's called Axel Rudder Cabana. So he's currently in court now, and he's been charged. Maybe if I let you tell me what you understand has happened really, and really I suppose my anger, and I guess maybe, I don't know what your anger is like, but we were constantly told that this character was a Christian, he was pictures of a young black kid and all that sort of stuff. Now some information has emerged that for people like us, it kind of validates or confirms what we suspected, or some of what we suspected around this character.
So it's a bit complicated at the moment. So what's just been released today is his charges. He's been charged under the Terrorism Act. So this wasn't now just a mental man with a knife stabbing children. The CPS and the police feel they've got enough evidence to charge him under terrorism. And what's that evidence? At the moment, reported through the mainstream press. So not conspiracy websites, not just a different version of me and you talking rubbish, but all the mainstream press are reporting he had Al-Qaeda training manuals, and he was producing ricin at home, which I believe you can do. It's not that hard. Yeah. From my understanding, I may be wrong here, someone may be able to correct us. All you need is wheat. It's growing something on wheat, and if you take that off it, that then can turn into ricin.
Is it like a fungus or something?
It's something that's my understanding. I could be completely wrong on this. I could be thinking of something else.
And ricin is a highly poisonous substance.
Terrorists use it for attacks and stuff like that. So he was developing that, and had an Al-Qaeda training manual. Now, obviously, that straight away that looks like this is an Islamic terrorist event. Doesn't make it so. So it may turn out to be that, but we don't know at the moment till we hear more from the court case. Because if you think about it this way, if you wanted to be a terrorist, and it doesn't matter what your aims and objectives are, but if you want to be a terrorist and you're doing some research, why wouldn't you download the Al-Qaeda training manual? I bet there's a lot of bloody good stuff in that Al-Qaeda training manual. So he may have downloaded it just for that. Another example I can give you is when the IRA moved to violence in the 60s, but earlier than that. When they moved to violence, they based their campaign on the suffragettes campaign.
Right.
Doesn't mean the IRA were feminists.
Yeah.
They just based their campaign on the campaign run by violent far left female lunatics.
Yeah.
So we don't know what this guy has done yet, as in, is he Islamist, is he not? But this will be coming out throughout the court case.
Yeah. Yeah.
We heard rumours that he went to a local mosque. We heard all these things. We don't know if any of that's true, but we will find out once this court case starts. And if it turns out to be that, if it turns out that he is an Islamist, and the police and the CPS and the government knew this from the very beginning, which they would have done within a few days, they would have done, then the way they've treated this case,
yes,
the way they've gaslighted us, the way they've lied to us, the way they've mistreated us and controlled us, not only is it disgusting, there has to be consequences to that.
And insulted us, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, basically calling us racist, the guy this isn't a terrorist attack, the newspapers. This information must have been available relatively quickly by the...
It is, but you've got... Reporting things, you've got to be careful, because in this country, we want people to have a fair trial.
Yeah.
And we don't want to prejudice the case. Even though, at the moment, we all think he's guilty of killing those 3 girls. But until it gets to a court of law, his defence might be, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
It was my twin brother. I was actually in France on a course and I'm on film. And so we don't know what his defence is yet. So we need to make sure we don't prejudice his defence.
Well, I kind of accept that if we didn't see all the people who are involved in the post-Southport riots, their names bandied around,
Yep.
their names made free to the public, certain people's, I think in certain cases, people's addresses.
Home Office saying on Twitter, all these people will be going to jail because they're guilty.
Yeah.
How do they know that it's not been to
Correct.
court yet? So they were prejudged.
Yeah. So it's a fair point you're making, and I agree. I think in a fair system, we shouldn't have that information. However, we know what I call now the political prisoners, or we call the political prisoners, were not treated that way. Their names in some cases, somebody's address, I think, was published before he'd even gone to trial, basically.
Yeah, but 2 wrongs don't make a right.
No,
so I want everyone treated equally, fairly
Yeah.
in our criminal justice system.
Yeah, but the hypocrisy, you're right. And I think they wouldn't have charged him as a terrorist if they didn't have more evidence behind that, rather than just the Al-Qaeda manual and some ricin. I mean, if you're producing ricin, you're looking to carry out a terrorist attack anyway. There were rumours about the fact he was seen in a local mosque or involved in the local mosque. But the way that the people who went out and protested were castigated for even suggesting that, the way the media, as you say, gaslighted us all the way through on that, and now this is emerging. I mean, I'm actually quite shocked, Nick, that this has actually emerged, that the CPS is actually doing this. I'm actually shocked that they're not trying, if this is the case, they're not trying to suppress this as well.
Well, there's probably a good case to be made. That's why it's taken so long. If they've charged this man with terrorism, it's because what you just said. It's because it's a slam dunk. Because the government don't want this result. The government don't want him to be treated as a terrorist, because that then negates everything they were saying about the far right, white racists. Turns out they were all right in the first place, so they don't want this. But because there must be that much evidence that they've had to go, we're not losing our jobs over this, so let's not pervert the course of justice. I'm not losing my job over this. This just has to go that way, because if it was on a knife's edge, the knife's edge would make sure, don't charge him with terrorism.
So you think it's pretty solid?
It has to be solid for them to go down this path.
And the fact that has already been released within the first day of the trial, or whatever it might be.
Well, the reason why this has been released because he was due in court a couple of days ago, and for some reason they delayed his case, and everyone was going, "Why are you delaying this? He's killed 3 girls. Why are you delaying the case? Why?"
Yeah.
So I think that's why this has all come out now from the CPS, as in it's more serious, and that's why we need more time. And I think
I see. Right.
Yeah.
And if this progresses as the way you and I think it is going to progress, what are the ramifications of that for everybody? Not just him, but for the people who've been arrested, for the government, for people like you and me, for our viewers. What will happen?
The government really want this to go away.
Sorry.
You messing with the chair? Have I not set the chair right? Sorry.
I'm not going to lean back and relax.
This isn't how the government wanted it to go. So how will the people feel once this gets to court and we start finding out all the truth? People will be angry again. They'll be angry again because suddenly they were proven right. This is why we're on the streets. This is why some idiots turn violent, because we're sick of Islamic terrorists. We're not sick of Muslims per se. We're sick of Islamic terrorists killing us. I wrote an article, I think it's in my book actually. Since 2005, there's been 93 terrorist deaths in this country attributed to Islamic terrorists, and there's been 2 who weren't.
Correct.
And one of them was a Polish foreigner killing someone,
Yeah.
and the other one was an English guy.
Yeah.
So it's all Islamic terrorism.
Yeah.
I mean, decades ago it was Irish terrorists.
Yeah.
So this isn't just purely Muslims have always been like this.
No, you're right. I think
you get
right.
waves of different
you're right.
terrorists.
That number's right. I can't remember when it started. But
It started 2005 with the London bombings.
Yeah. So you're right. There's been 93 deaths
Yeah.
directly ascribed to Islamic terrorism,
Yes.
basically, and none from far right. Though
2.
I don't think there have been 2 from far right.
Yeah, 2. So one was a Polish guy living in this country. So I don't take that one. He was a foreigner himself, killing another foreigner. I don't take that one.
Was he far right though?
Well, he's been castigated as far right.
Right. Okay.
And the other one was the idiot who drove his van into outside a mosque.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And that guy died.
Yeah.
So there's definitely one.
Yes. Yeah.
But just the numbers.
The numbers are just massively.
Nearly 100 to 1.
Yeah. And I think I was reading a lot of these stats we're going to talk about, because this, again, it's interesting this has happened within the last hour or so, because I wanted to talk today about immigration and what's happening, and kind of a sense of despair as well. I think I'm starting to get in terms of, is there a way forward on this? And yesterday my wife mentioned that I live in Sale, which is in South Manchester, and we're just on the corner of Altrincham basically. So there's a big hotel in the centre of Altrincham called the Cresta Court Hotel. You may or may not know it. So we found out on all the news on the local WhatsApp was that's going to be turned into an asylum hostel, basically. Right? And that is right in the heart of Altrincham, which is a very middle class environment, and that will cause all sorts of issues in that town centre. I can tell you right now, and that kind of depressed me really, because it just doesn't seem to be ending this now.
The government have just given just advertising a contract to house immigrants, and it's a 6-year contract.
Yes, yeah. I think they've allocated some massive sum of money. Is it £7 billion for the next 6 years to pay for these things? Starmer has just granted asylum, or he's expected to grant asylum to 60,000 irregular immigrants.
Yes, illegal immigrants, and that's because
of Rwanda, because he scrapped Rwanda.
Well,
I think.
That's part of it, but he wants to get the numbers down. So if he can legalise 60,000 illegal immigrants,
they're no longer illegal.
They're no longer illegal. They don't go on that stat anymore now. So all of a sudden the backlog has been reduced. Well done, Starmer. Let's clap him.
We got the numbers a couple of weeks ago that 1 in 10 people in the UK is here illegally.
1 in 100.
1 in 100. Sorry, 1 in 100.
Yeah.
So 1 in 10 would be pretty bad. 1 in 100
Yeah.
people in the country are here illegally.
Yeah. So not immigrants.
Not immigrants, no.
No, not working visas.
Yeah.
Just people who shouldn't be in the country. 1% of our population shouldn't even be here.
Yes, yeah.
That's shocking.
It is shocking. We've heard the numbers is it 10,000 people, foreign nationals in the prisons at the moment.
Yep, 12% of the prison population,
12% of the
foreign
prison
nationals.
population. There was an article about Coventry. Apparently, in Coventry, they have been overrun basically with immigrants. 1 in 4 residents in Coventry are born outside the UK, and 1 in 7, 50,000, have arrived since 2011.
Yeah.
So we are being overwhelmed now by immigrants, and it doesn't seem to be stopping, and nobody seems to want to stop it.
Yeah.
And you and I talk about it here, but is there an answer to this, or is there not an answer to this? Because
there's definitely an answer to it, and we all know the answer. Many people know the answer. We're just having, and we won't for a while yet, we won't have a government willing to implement the answer. This government won't do it. Whoever wins the next election, if Labour don't win it, probably won't do it. They may tinker with it. It's the election after that, which will be the one that sorts.
I don't know if I'll be alive then, Nick.
We have to be. We have to be. I mean, Coventry sounds bad, but it's worse in Manchester, my town. So at the 2021 census, 1 in 3 people in my city of Manchester were not born in the UK. 1 in 3.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's worse than Coventry.
Worse than Coventry, 1 in 3. So not immigrants, as in children of immigrants. I'm talking about people who weren't even born in the country. 1/3 of them in Manchester were not born in the country.
And it's noticeable, isn't it? I mean, you've moved out to the gentle suburbs of Manchester, into what I suggest is a predominantly white area. I live in Sale in South Manchester, and I have noticed, because I used to joke that I was the only black man in Sale when we first moved in there, which was 30 years ago, because there weren't many brown faces. So the joke was, I'm the only black man in Sale, you know, like I'm the only gay in the village. I was the only black man in Sale. But now I've noticed, as I walk through Sale or across Sale, there are Indians, there are Africans, there are Chinese, and these are not like 1 every 10 people. These are, this is most of the population as I'm walking through this town. And I'm never really, until you and I started to talk, until I started to step out of took the red pill, or the blue pill.
Red pill.
The red pill. I didn't really think about these things or notice them, but I am noticing it.
Because it happens slowly.
Yeah.
Happens over a decade. Happened over a decade, and but this is, immigration's out of control. We know it's out of control, and so it doesn't surprise us when we see more foreigners because it's out of control.
Yeah, and the impact it's doing to this country as well, in terms of I was reading about the GDP, living standards in this country.
Yeah.
Are now growing at their slowest rate for over 50 years.
Well, I'm surprised they're still growing.
Yes, it's a very good point. Actually.
I'm surprised they're still growing. I'm quite surprised that I actually thought living standards were falling.
Yeah.
Minutely. I just thought I thought we'd hit the peak, and I thought the beginning to go down.
Yeah.
But obviously not.
Because because there's so many people here now. All the services are stretched. Tax is high to presumably fund a lot of what is happening here. So people don't have that much disposable income, and everything's expensive because the people who sell things have got to charge more in order to pay their salaries. You know, so you've got this awful vicious circle, basically.
I don't think the money side has got anything to do with it.
Really?
Yeah, I think the money side to it is a simple answer because we understand money. I think our living standards are going down for many reasons. It's because there's far too many people on the islands. All our services were built for a certain amount of population. We've got 10-15 million people turn up in the last 10-15 years. We can't cope.
So it is that reason then?
No, it's down to immigration.
So that's what I said. That's what I'm saying. Our living standards.
Yeah. No, you sort of moved into the money side of things. Everything's more expensive. But governments, because they've been short of money, have not spent money on the upkeep of services because they can't afford
Yeah.
it. And then when you look purely at, you know, families can't get their children into schools. You can't get a dentist or a doctor's appointment because there's an extra 10, 15 million people here. We've now got people living next door to us who don't speak English, who come from a different country, different culture, different religion. That subconsciously puts us on edge because they're not like us. We now live in a low trust society. We don't trust each other anymore now because you're not like us. You don't even support the same football team as me. You don't even support the monarchy. You keep telling me that you know, you support this country and you're going to go back to that country. So you're not like me, and all that is destroying the country slowly. That's why mental health is going out of control. The socialist state is killing us as well. And I put all that on the shoulders of why quality of life is declining.
Yeah.
You can be poor and still have a good quality of life.
Yes.
If your family's around you and you're working and you're securing your job. And we don't have secure jobs anymore now because we've got an oversupply of cheap labour. So there's no security there. We're not paying people what they're worth. All this is adding up. And I put it all down to the feet of immigration.
I think it accounts for a massive percentage of that problem. And yeah, I agree. I think the money issues have arisen directly because of the burden of the people that have been brought in. And we know again on immigration that actually this myth of these people that contribute to society is bollocks.
Yeah.
We know now that for every pound of tax that good immigrants are generating in terms of that, £1.60 is taken by the bad immigrants. There's a net negative 60 pence for every pound that's earned, impacting on this country. So there's a tax drain on the country. That's beyond dispute now.
Oh yeah, all the figures have come out from the
All
LBR.
the figures have come out.
They're bleeding us dry. The third world is bleeding us dry.
Yeah. They're bleeding us dry, and behind all that is the background that the native people, the native white people in this country, are told how crap they are all the time.
Yeah.
How they're racist. The Southport thing is now a very, very clear example. They were, they attributed this to the fact this was related to immigrants, to Muslims or whatever, to Islam. They were called racist for it. They were thrown in prison. We've seen all that going on. So the native people, a lot of them who are generating the tax and the money to subsidise the immigrants, are treated like dirt by this government.
That's how, and it's not just this government. It's been going on for decades, but that's how it seems.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
Yeah.
It feels like we're being treated like second-class citizens.
Yeah.
And when he talks about the Southport riot, we need to remember all the misinformation was by foreigners and people who weren't white English because they've been arrested.
Yeah.
The guy got arrested in Pakistan. Someone's got arrested here and charged because they're the ones who are inciting the racial hatred. So even when idiots, white English idiots, do commit violence, well, they were pushed into it by foreigners by spreading misinformation online.
Yeah, and the reason I'm kind of despairing is because I'm not sure what our route out. To me, it's now becoming, speaking to people like you, just reading the news, being interested in this, it's now becoming very patently clear to me what the problem is. And also, I think relatively easy to find out what the solution is to these things as well. But there's nobody there to protect us, to do this for us. Tommy Robinson, who you and I have talked about before, labelled, I mean, if you read them, Wikipedia, the mainstream, he's called a right-wing, extreme right-wing fascist, or whatever he's called. He's just been put in jail for 18 months now. So the people are champions. And there was a march in London on Saturday, wasn't there? Quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
I didn't go, unfortunately, but quite a lot of people went to that. Meant to be led by Tommy Robinson, but he was obviously in jail. So our champions are being arrested and imprisoned as well, aren't they, in all this?
I don't think Tony Robinson is going to lead us into a better tomorrow. I've not got a problem with Tony Robinson. I've never found one thing he said to be racist. Yeah. If someone can find something, send it to us, because I'd love to find out, because I've never heard one thing he said that's racist. I wouldn't despair if I was you. This is what I was predicting last year when I was saying I want the Labour government, I want the Labour to win the election, because they're going to take us to rock bottom quicker. And it's only when we hit rock bottom will we find the leader we need who will lead us back into salvation, into the promised land. And we've not hit rock bottom yet. They've only been in power 100 days. They've made a mess of it, and more of a mess than I ever imagined in 100 days. But we need to wait for the budget. We need the budget to ripple through the economy and the economy to do worse. We need unemployment to start rising. We need all these problems start hitting us. And then the average person on the street will go, oh, I didn't sign up for any of this. What's going on? At that point then, the Tories, the two leadership contestants at the moment are both waste of space as far as I'm concerned. But they'll fail because they're not saying the things that people want to hear, apart from Jenrick, but I'm not sure if anyone believes him. But the leader that comes after him may be the leader. Or Reform may do really well at the county elections in May. So maybe it'll be Reform, I don't know. But this is all what I predicted and what I hope would happen. We need to hit rock bottom, and we need to get there as quick as possible so we can rebuild and get out of it. Otherwise, if it's not a fast decline, it's just another replica of the last 30-year slow decline that no one notices. We need a rapid decline where it wakes everybody up. So I'm not despondent. I knew this would be the case.
You think things will get worse faster?
And I want it to get worse. I want it to get worse faster because it's the only way to save the country. Otherwise, with that frog in that boiling water not getting out because it happened to get heated slowly.
I mean, things certainly do seem to have accelerated. My view was, with all this happening, people would start to wake up, but they still haven't woken up.
They are.
More than, I think you're right, more than they
More
have.
People are beginning to wake up. It just happens slowly. When we hit change, when we hit the tipping point, change will come very quickly. And we don't know what that tipping point is. So the tipping point could be, the budget. We could look, it's great with hindsight when you look back in history going, oh, of course that was going to change the world. Of course killing the Archduke Ferdinand was going to start a war. Of course. But when you're living through it, you don't know anything when you're living through it. So
it's a good point.
So we don't know what's going to change this. But for some comfort, look across the channel to Europe. They're changing their policies. They're closing their borders. Some of the northern European countries are deporting migrants that we can't deport. Deporting people to Afghanistan. We can't deport child rapists to Afghanistan. Sweden is and Germany are. So these countries, are doing it. So all we need to do it now is the right leader. I don't know who that is. I don't know what party they're going to be in, and I'm not sure when they're going to hit the stage. But they're on the way.
I hope you're right. I mean, I just, and again, despairing, we talk about Tommy Robinson and free speech and the people who are going to champion our causes, but this government, and I include the Tories in with the Labour Party. Some of the things they're doing. Lucy Connolly, who was the wife of a count.
Oh yeah, she got 3 years.
She got 31 months. She just did a tweet.
Yeah. And then deleted it several hours later.
And all she said in that tweet was something along the lines of, burn the hostels down with them in it. I don't care, sort of thing, and it was, this is just, she lost a baby, this lady, and apparently in circumstances that gave her some concerns about immigrants. But the things like that happening, Tommy Robinson being arrested, there's a chap called Adam Smith Connor, who was convicted and arrested and put in prison for praying silently outside the abortion clinic. Have you heard about this? So they're now arresting people. And
have been for several years outside abortion clinics for that.
He was literally standing outside an abortion clinic, silently, saying nothing. He's arrested. And then you see people getting away with horrific crimes. Horrific crimes, such as Hugh Edwards and lots. I think we gave a case of 11 examples.
There's so much worse than Hugh Edwards being let off and walking out of court. People raping people, walking out of court. And then when you do end up in court, the ones who are foreigners don't even get deported because it's unfair. There's some Portugal guy. I forgot what his crime was now.
Belgian.
No, the port that I read today. Portuguese guy who can't be deported because it will affect his mum's human rights because she won't be able to see him because she lives here. I mean, this is how mad it's getting.
Yeah, and that's the bit I'm really worried
But your
about.
human rights don't matter, mate.
Yeah, I know.
Your daughter's human rights don't matter.
No.
But this scumbag's mum's human rights, well, they matter more than your daughter's.
Yeah, and it's the fact that these kind of travesties of justice are now happening blatantly, openly, being reported on, and nobody seems to be... Because, of course, we all, don't we? We as children, when we're growing up, even, adults within this society think there's somebody there looking after us, making sure that... I certainly grew up that way, believing there was a greater being or force out there that wouldn't allow people to do really bad things. That seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, because we live in a low trust society. We don't expect anyone to be looking out for us anymore, because we won't look out for them, because everyone's a stranger to me. There is no common bond. We're not the same people, the same race, the same religion. So we're all out for ourselves. I may protect my family, but I won't protect your family. And that's a society that's developed over many decades now. It's called a low trust society.
It's a lonely place to be, though, isn't it, don't you think?
Why do you think we've got mental health going through the roof and antidepressants and all that? Because if you live in a high trust society, that means you trust all the people around you. That's good for your mental health. And if you live in a low trust society, that means you're looking out for danger all the time. When I'm doing a business deal with you, I'm buying something from this shop, are you ripping me off? Is that really what I'm buying? Am I going to get mugged on the way home? Why is that man talking to me? Is he going to rape me? And that's because when you live in a low trust society, you trust no one. And that's bad for your mental health, because you're constantly on edge, and it kills you.
And you think back to our childhoods. I'm older than you, but think back to our childhood. You think that was a higher trust society?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the stats show this. This has been declining, and it's been declining for decade on decade on decade.
Yeah.
Part of it will be down to the big drop off came with internet, social media, and stuff like that. And there's a big drop off where mums and parents started being too overprotective of their children and wouldn't let them to go out to play. And if they went out to play, they would stand there and watch them. My mum never left the house when I was outside playing, unless they called me back in.
Yeah.
And that's where you learn your social skills. That's where you learn what you can do, what you can't do, and where to go and not to do. And there's dangers out there. But kids these days have their parents with them all the time. It's called helicopter parenting. And that's where your parents are always hovering.
Yeah.
Always hovering. Is he going to fall? Oh, let me go pick him up. Don't pick your child up if he falls.
Yeah.
Let your child get up, stop crying, and carry on playing, because you're not going to be there when they're an adult. And they're not gaining the skills, the confidence now, ready for adulthood.
Yeah.
And also does the low trust community as well.
And it's interesting you talk about that, because the Home Office have now asked teachers, and there's this helicopter parenting. There's also this obsession with monitoring and controlling children as well that's happening now, and certainly within the schools. The Home Office is now asking teachers to report sexist comments by teenage boys to prevent. Prevent is a terrorist. And they're saying they believe sexism to be on a par with Islamic extremism. Yeah. And examples of what they're talking about is a boy at school saying, a woman's place is in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So the ludicrous situation where a young lad says, oh, women belong in the kitchen or whatever, then being reported to prevent.
And if he believes that, then that's his right to believe that.
Yeah.
There's many cultures who believe that. Now, they're doing this for two reasons, not for the reason we think they're doing it for. I don't think they think one moment that these people will lead to being incel terrorists. They're doing it, because it's a woke cause. Oh, it's all about misogyny. Oh, misogyny. There is no such thing as misogyny in the world. In my book, not the book now, but the book before, there's so many social science studies looking for misogyny in men and can't find it. And the reason why they can't find it is because men put women ahead of other men. Women put women ahead of men, but men put women ahead of men. So men don't hate women. Some men will mistreat women, but that's not misogyny. Misogyny is a hatred of all women. So the Labour Party's had a policy on this now for ages. So this looks like they're doing something. But I think the main reason why they're doing this is a great way to start referring white boys into Prevent, because we're referring far too many brown boys into Prevent. We need more white people.
We need to get our numbers up.
Otherwise, we look like we're Islamophobic and racist.
Yeah.
So just do something where we can start referring white people into Prevent. And I think this is it. I don't think any of those cases will be picked up, but they'll all be recorded. So over the next couple of years, they can start reporting, Prevent now, referrals to Prevent is only 55% brown Islamic kids, but 45% white and black kids. So we're not doing so bad now, where at the moment it's something like 85% brown Islamic kids.
So it's another case of EDI, basically.
Yes.
Equality, diversity, inclusion.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we have more white boys called criminals, just so we don't appear to be racist now.
Spot on.
Well, that's just shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the case. Because actually...
But the only people who are treated negatively through this are white boys, so who cares?
Well, I think that this is the point, isn't it? White middle-aged men and now white young working class men are treated abysmally in this country now. They're treated the worst out of everybody. They're given the worst opportunity. We know that the education, quality of further education for white working class boys is far lower than any other ethnic minority.
And it has been for decades.
Yes, and it's this constant, and this is again the frustration for me. This is happening. White working class people are seeing this, but nobody's hearing them. Nobody's hearing their voice, are they?
No, because they don't have the communication skills, they don't have the right skills to allow themselves to express how they feel, because some of them turn violent, in which case it's easy to dismiss. And then once you've had violence, the people who are not violent go on, I'm not being associated with that. And we've also had 50, 60, 70 years of white people in this country being told, if you say anything, you're a racist.
Yeah.
And racist, not up to now, but up to a few years ago, this was true. Racist is the worst thing you could be called in this country. It's worse than being called a pedo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this oppression now, but the question I was thinking about this kind of censorship to our young people, our creative people, what does it do to them? Because if you're not allowed to express yourself, even in school now, and because I was thinking, I'm a big fan of Joe Orton, the playwright. I don't know if you know him, but he was creative and cheeky, and he did things like going into the library and writing on the inside of, doing his drawings. With these people, by their very nature, they are outrageous. They say outrageous things. They do outrageous things, and they often become our most creative and talented people. What happens to them? What happens to creativity and talent in this country? We've got a situation where now you can't express your opinions. And I have a friend who made a comment about a so-called trans kid, and he was hauled up before the headmaster because he said, "Is it a boy or a girl, or is it, what are you, a boy or a girl?" Something totally innocent and whatever. Hauled up before the headmaster. So now and he's a bright kid. These bright kids have no outlet now to say things they're thinking. So the things they would say, probably outrageous things, interesting, different things. You know what I mean, Nick?
Yeah.
Because that's how these people arrive on our doorsteps in terms of creativity.
Yeah.
They are different, aren't they? They say different things. That's being stamped out now.
You have to do is look at comedy over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Look at the arts over the last 10 years. Look at plays, look at films.
Yeah.
All the creative people are either not in it or are too scared to be creative. So we're producing crap all the time.
Yeah.
That's what happens when we put a lid on these people. But another way of looking at it is people with views you don't like. Just because you don't like it and you can force them to be quiet, those views don't go away. They pop up somewhere else in a more nasty, violent, underhanded way. So if somebody is, let's say someone is a racist, well, let them speak. Then we all know they're a racist.
Yeah.
But telling them not to speak, they then go underground. And they'll meet other people who've been told you can't speak. And some of them won't be racist, but they've got an affinity with that person because, yeah, we've all been told to shut up. And that doesn't, and then what are they going to do? Then become a terrorist organisation. And this is all just far-fetched, I know that. But people have people need the right to express themselves.
Yeah.
And given the benefit that they will express themselves many times in the wrong way, using clumsy language, using the wrong phrases, being offensive. But that's how they express themselves, and we need them to express themselves. They don't do it verbally, they'll express themselves in another way.
And I want to hear people expressing themselves. I don't, my views on the hate laws, I think they should be abolished.
Yep.
I think people should be free to say racist things or whatever.
Yep, I think they should, yeah.
And I think society will control that. Because I think society has controlled it for a long time. And somebody who goes too far or says things, society will control that.
But not now, because we've lived in a socialist state now for 50, 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
That's why we don't control anything now, because the state will do it. It's not my job. The
Yeah.
police should deal
Yeah.
with that. The council should deal with
Yeah.
that.
And Starmer, we're going to come on to the Labour Party later, but Starmer in his latest speech has said, don't expect that taxes won't keep going up. That's he's I don't know if you saw that.
No.
So he's actually now saying, and the socialist dream, the vision, will come to the Labour Party, and is coming to fruition in his mind now.
Yeah.
And he has he's bold enough to say, don't expect that taxes are going to ever go down again, basically.
Because if we're supplying everything you need, why do you need all your wages?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And he is now heading in his mind to this utopia where the state controls everybody, where most people are employed by the public sector, where everybody gets paid the same, where the rich, these bastard rich, are taxed, into oblivion. I think in his mind he's heading there now. I think he thinks that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just sounds like an absolute nightmare for the country and for people. And it's all about, within that, controlling the people. Now, if we go to America, the question I want to ask you is, we don't have the First Amendment in this country, do we? Should we have the First Amendment in this country? And for our viewers, the First Amendment, as I understand
freedom of speech.
Is freedom of speech, the ability, which is the fundamental part of the American society. Although I'm not convinced it's controlled fully in American society.
So it's not working completely correctly in America, but it's a bit easier over there because of the First Amendment. I worry about a Bill of Rights, which one of those rights would be freedom of speech, because once you wrote them down, you can never predict what happens in the future, and you don't want to set those rights today where you don't. So how our system works is on precedents. So you have court cases where it works out what the right answer is or the right path to go down. That can always be challenged with another court case, and if that court case wins, that's the new precedents set. I don't think it matters what system we have in this country at the moment, because no matter what system we had, our MPs and civil servants are of such a poor quality, they would mess it up anyway. If we had much better MPs in this country and with a backbone, I think our system would work so much better. Much better. I mean, Americans now, Harris and all that are talking about free speech, and if Elon Musk should have Twitter and this and that. They're having the same discussions. They want to get rid of free speech. All socialists do. All dictators do, on the left and the right, want to get rid of free speech. Because the last thing, when you're not sure if you've got the right answers, then you don't want anyone criticising you.
Correct.
If you're adamant you've got the right answers, then bring it on. No matter what you can say to me, I'll have the answer for it because I know I'm right. And if I'm not right, well, you've just done me a favour by proving me I'm wrong. The truth never needs the law to defend it.
Yes, yeah. And that has been bastardised already in this country, as we saw with the people who've been arrested recently, the so-called political prisoners.
Yeah, they are political prisoners.
They are political prisoners, and we'll talk in a minute about Peter Blake. Is it Peter Blake?
Peter Lynch.
Peter Lynch. Sorry, Peter Blake is an artist. About Peter Lynch and that side of things, but he was sentenced to death by this government, basically, for political reasons. There's no other way to talk about this guy.
Nobody else. If he was a different colour, sex, sexuality, religion, he never would have gone to jail for what they said he did.
Yeah.
Never. It was only because he was an old white, straight man,
Yeah.
that he was sent to jail.
Yeah. In terms of free speech and what's happening, and in America as well. So in the EU now, they're using the Digital Services Act to ask the tech giants like Facebook and to reveal their algorithms. So they're trying to now actually get hold of the algorithms that have been used by the tech giants to talk to people, but to look to control what people are seeing, basically.
And I don't think that's any of their concern.
Yeah, it's none of their
Those
concern.
algorithms are worth a fortune.
Yeah.
That's how they run their social media. And those algorithms, well, why do the government want to know those algorithms? It's either so they can use them, or so they can change them. I'm saying, no, that we don't want that algorithm to promote far right stuff to people who might like far right stuff. We want far right people only to be promoted stuff that we say is that.
But it's also more sinister, isn't it? We're going to use those algorithms to find the far right people, or we consider the far right people, because people who are looking for certain things, they're the people we want to get in jail, basically, because they won't have views that correspond with ours. So there's that side of it, not just limiting information. It's tracking people who are who are reading certain things as part of it.
There's, you know, that if you make a phone call in this country, on any device, and you say certain keywords. So if you made a phone call to me and said Al Qaeda, blow up, Allah Akbar, once you said one or two of those words, the computers at GCHQ in Cheltenham pick that up. That phone call is downloaded, and depending on how many flags are on it, it'll either get listened to by a computer and analysed, or it goes straight to an individual to sit down and listen to it. I know this because I had friends who worked there and told me all this stuff.
Really?
So this has been happening for decades. They're looking for the people they class as the enemy. And for social media, that prevent to... There was a government document who was saying we need to refer more white boys into prevent from school. So if they're listening to people like Jordan Peterson, Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray was on there because he was laughing about it. He did a video about it. So if you know, and them two are both academics. If they're talking about them, that's your first red flag. That's what governments are trying to do.
Andrew Tate. Hillary Clinton is now also calling... She's a dreadful woman, isn't she? Did you know the Clintons, there's like a so-called murder list associated? Have you heard about this?
No.
There's like a list of people who have died who have had contact with the Clintons or been involved with the Clintons. And I'm not joking, I've seen the list.
No.
It's like 100 people.
No.
You know, and what they say, that's why the joke in America now, when they talk about Clinton, I don't know if you ever watched Gutfeld, which is on Fox News. You should watch it.
I know who he is. Yeah.
They always kind of make an allusion to the fact that anybody who's associated will surely end up dead. Basically, I don't know where this has come from. Yeah. But there is a list of people. I'll send it to you. No. Like 100 people who have all mysteriously died around Hillary Clinton or the Clintons. So she wants to criminally charge Americans who are engaged in propaganda. So stuff like this, she wants to criminally charge people. Yeah.
And it goes back
to... totally undermines the First Amendment, doesn't it?
It does. But it also gives that age-old question, what's propaganda? Who decides what's propaganda?
Yes.
Who decides what's a lie? Who decides? Because the people she'll want to decide that are the people we wouldn't want deciding that.
Yes.
Hence why free speech is important.
Yeah.
We've got so many examples throughout history of people being told you're wrong, you're evil, and we're going to kill you for saying those things, and then it turned out to be right. Like Galileo, that the earth goes round the sun. No, it doesn't. So he's persecuted. You know, eventually he's sentenced to death for some other stuff than that. But it turns out he was right. The earth does go round the sun. So thinking you own the truth today doesn't mean it's the truth. Because most scientists who have ever existed have been years later, decades later, centuries later. Most scientists have all been proved to be wrong and didn't know what they were talking about.
And that's a very important point, because what I'd like to say to our viewers is the things that you and I talk about, these are our opinions. We're not saying at any point this is correct and this is fact. But it's interesting. I was out on Sunday, and I won't mention the person who's involved, but it was a young woman I was talking to, not in a seedy way.
I was going to say, your wife watches this. Don't be talking about these conversations.
She was actually away, so that's it. And we were talking about Trump. And as you can imagine, whenever people go out with me, it always ends up in a heated discussion. Nowadays, it does anyway, about things. I have to be very careful with some of our friends because I just cannot stray into conversations that, you know. And we were chatting and we were talking about Trump, and, you know, I said, as I always say, I like Trump. That's my opinion. I like Trump. And what she said was really interesting. She said, yeah, but what about abortion? Yeah. How can anybody not believe that women have a right to
kill their babies,
to abortion? And what was fascinating about that, there was no room. And I said to her, that's an opinion. It's not a matter of fact. I said, you know, the reality about abortion and believing whether women have a right to abortion is not a matter of fact. It's an opinion and a choice and something that's up for debate. And I could see she was bewildered for a second, because in her head she just couldn't understand. How can you support Trump? Because how can you support somebody who doesn't believe that women have a right to have an abortion? And it's like, in her head, and you talk about propaganda and what's right, what's wrong. In her head, there was no room for the fact that women having an abortion people might have a different opinion, or it could be argued that it's the wrong thing to do. There wasn't a glimmer.
And that's because she's never met anyone who disagreed with that statement.
Yes, possibly. Yeah.
So all the men she knows are weak, cowardly men who
Yeah.
are quite willing to let babies die.
Yeah.
All the women who agree with her all want that special right that put their personal convenience over the life of the most vulnerable. So she's never met anyone who disagrees. So therefore, she thinks Trump's evil for not agreeing.
Yeah, but she's never met anybody who said that is a matter of opinion. I think that was the thing. I didn't say, oh, abortion is wrong or whatever. I just said that view is an opinion. It's not a fact.
Yeah.
It isn't a fact that women should always have the choice to have an abortion. It's an opinion, and it's a generally accepted opinion of most people. And you and I have talked about this before.
It's not mentioned in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights,
Yeah.
in anything in America.
Yeah.
So people say it's my right. Well, it's not in the Constitution. The word abortion is not mentioned in any of the founding documents whatsoever.
But it goes back to this thing about propaganda. Hillary Clinton wants to charge people engaged in propaganda.
Yeah.
And therefore, Hillary Clinton, whose views will probably be similar to that girl's about abortion, if somebody puts that propaganda saying abortion is wrong, criminally charged and in prison. That's where it goes.
She would be saying propaganda is saying that fetus is a baby. That's propaganda.
Yeah.
Because it's not a baby, it's a fetus. It only becomes a baby when you take it out of the womb. That's propaganda calling it a baby. You go to jail.
And I made the point to this girl. I said, you now know there are states in America, because of course abortion laws have devolved into the individual states.
That's how it used to be before it went federal,
Yeah.
Now it's gone back.
It's gone back to it now. But now, you may have to correct me on this, my understanding is now that you can abort a baby full term in certain places in America.
You can here in this country. People in this country think it's 24 weeks. You can abort a baby in the UK up to 1 hour, up to a second of it being delivered, if you can get a doctor to sign off on it. And to get a doctor to sign off on it, all you've got to do is show that the baby's deformed. It can be a club foot, it can be a cleft palate, or that it's going to damage you mentally so severely that your life's more important. Any of those things, you can abort a full term baby in this country, in the UK. And how they abort it is they get a hypodermic needle full of poison. It goes into the womb, and on the scanner they've got to find the baby's heart. It's pushed straight into the baby's heart, where the baby then reacts and screams, and the poison's injected into the baby's heart. Then the doctor has to go inside the woman and break the baby into bits and pull the baby out bit by bit. happens in this country. Not that, I mean, you're probably looking that, I don't know the figures, you're probably looking at a couple of dozen a year maybe, or something like that.
Still a hell of a lot.
But in America, yeah, and if you got, and the doctor signed it off in some states in America, yeah.
And I pointed this out to this guy. I didn't know it happened in this country as much as that. She was quite shocked.
Of course they are.
Because she's not been told that before. She's not heard that from anyone.
And not read anything about it and doesn't want to know anything about it.
And I don't know if you know, I was going to talk about this later, but in connection with abortion, so the NHS are now sending condolence letters to women who've miscarried. So if a woman miscarried, say 20 weeks or whatever, they're going to saying sorry about the loss of your baby.
Yeah.
And you have this awful, staggering hypocrisy.
Yeah.
That's happening
at the same time. Yeah.
Babies of older than that, fully viable babies, are being aborted.
Yeah.
How does that happen? How does that dichotomy, that variance happen?
This only happens with ideology, where you're not looking for it to make sense. You've been told this good, this bad. A woman who loses her baby, I would imagine it's horrendous.
Yeah,
you know, it must be horrendous. But a woman with the same baby at the same age can abort it. So it's either a baby or it's not a baby. And then when you have premature babies born at 20 weeks, 22 weeks, we spend millions saving them.
Yeah.
But the bed next door, we're killing that 20-week-old baby and ripping it apart inside and dragging it out. None of it makes any sense.
And if you sent a letter to the woman who'd had an abortion saying condolences on the loss of your baby, it would be horrific, a horrific thing. It would be a horror, and the person who sent the letter would be sacked or whatever.
Yeah.
But you've got that awful hypocrisy there.
So many women, there's some studies on this, I can't remember them now. So many women regret having abortions because they're told it's nothing. And then they go through the abortion, and deep down inside they always knew it wasn't nothing. And what normally kicks it in is when they then have their first child, and they're holding their first child going, I killed something just like you. It would have grown to be just like, and that's when it really affects women.
And interesting, when we were talking, one of my sons was with me in this when we were having this meal. This girl referenced that a friend she had who'd had an abortion and said she couldn't have coped with it at such and such an age or whatever. And then my son said, well, actually, one of my good friends is Fred, or whatever, I don't know his name was. His girlfriend got pregnant when they were 17. He said they've got a really nice family. He said they were considering that abortion. He said they've got a really nice family. They're a really happy couple. And again, she was kind of flipping out, you know. So it's kind of all these ideas are ingrained in people's minds, certainly left-wing people and their belief systems.
The answer should be more careful.
Yeah.
We've got more contraception now than ever before. Different methods, different modes. It's all completely free in the UK.
But despite that, there's still 250,000
abortions a year. When it started in 1968, I think it was, there was 25,000 abortions the first year when they legalised abortion. It's gone up tenfold, and we've got more and more contraception, and it's all completely free.
I want to finish this episode just talking about family, because I know this is a big thing for you. And I was looking at the people, senior people who are running our country. So Wes Streeting is gay. He has a fiancée. He hasn't got a convention.
His fiancée is something like the chief exec of the Labour Party or something.
Yeah, his fiancée has been given the job since as the chief exec of it. He's been given a government job, not the Labour Party.
Oh, is that a government job?
He's paid 105 grand a year for some job with the government. Keir Starmer, we know there's something wrong with his family life. We know it's not a conventional family. It hasn't broken yet. We'll talk about that later. Angela Rayner, single mum.
Whose son and his girlfriend do OnlyFans. Did you know that?
Oh, I think you told me about
that. They do that. An OnlyFans page doing bondage or slapping each other's asses with lettuce or something, and they get paid doing that. So she raised him well.
Kamala Harris never had any children.
Right.
So she talks about being a parent, but she's never actually.
She's a step parent, yeah.
She's a step parent, and her kids were actually nearly adults when she married her current side of it. And then this thing about the NHS sending condolences on miscarriages. What I'm saying there is, and maybe you'll hold me to task on this, we are being governed by an elite who do not have, in a lot of cases, conventional families. What you and I understand as a conventional family. A wife, a husband, children. And you and I have talked about families before. An interesting Kemi Badenoch, who is a candidate for the Tory leadership, she recently wrote an article or spoke about where are the dads, about the fact that, you know, we talk about single mothers and castigate or whatever, but where are the fathers now in our society? Yeah. And I think there's two things to say here. I know your views on family, and I know they're very strong, but I think what I also want to say is, it's part of the problem here that the people, the elite, the ruling class, don't actually know what a family looks like. A true family looks like. The nuclear family that you and I knew in the 60s and 70s. Do they actually understand what a family is? And is part of the reason they're doing what they're doing is because they either don't know what it is or they despise the family. Is that a reason that these things are happening?
I think the first thing I would say is, if you were crossing a road, even now with your adult, all your children adults, even with your adult children now, and there was a bus he didn't see or she didn't see, would you jump in a road to push your child out of the way knowing you would be hit by that bus?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you would.
Yeah.
Because that's inbuilt in you.
Yeah.
That's you wanting your children to survive. That all goes down to genetics and trying to pass on your genes. You wouldn't hesitate. You wouldn't think about it. You wouldn't go, right, it's all too late then. It'd be an instinct.
Yeah, I've been in situations like that. I was once in a firework party where the firework thing fell over and the fireworks started shooting. And I pushed myself in front of the children so the fireworks would hit me, and I pushed them out of the way. I wasn't really concerned whether I'd be hit with the fireworks or not. So there have been various situations where that's happened.
Part of that's leadership, part of that is the protective instinct. If our politicians don't have that with their own families, how are they going to protect and lead the nation? That's why we keep getting short-termism. That's why we keep getting the wrong decisions being made. Because politicians should be saying, not in an infantile way, but looking at the populace going, basically, they're my children. I want this country to survive. That's why I'm planning for the future. That's why I'm going to do what needs to be done today that will benefit people 20 years from now. And they won't thank me for it, but your children didn't thank you when you were raising them. I bet they thought you were too harsh sometimes or whatever. But it's not about you do what's the right thing for them in the future. And lots of our politicians don't have that. So let's look at Theresa May, no children. Boris Johnson, he's fathered loads of kids, not sure if he's in all their lives. So
we don't actually know how many kids he's got.
Right, so not a great role model there.
Multiple partners.
Yeah, I don't think Liz Truss, has she got children? I don't know. I'm not sure. Rishi Sunak did, close family. But you're right, we keep getting these politicians who don't have that traditional family. And I don't think, unless you've got that traditional family, that you can lead the country and put other people first as much as you do when you're a biological parent and you've done that. So being a parent can be a training course to get into politics. You're not successful now, but there would have been times when you weren't successful, where you would have put your children first. You'd have bought what they wanted and you wouldn't have bought what you wanted because you were putting them first. We've had this conversation before, where men get criticised, men like you get criticised sometimes because, you weren't there in the early days. You were always working, you left it all to your wife. Well, you may have done, but that was your job. Your job was to keep a roof above and your children's head. Make sure there's money in the bank, make sure you could take them on holidays. You didn't go to work to avoid your children. You went to work because of your children. Because if you weren't doing the hunting, the protecting from tribal times, your family would die. So men get a hard time sometimes for not being there. But it's not they don't want to be there, but their priorities tell them, I need to earn a living. I need to make sure there's food on the table. We've got a roof on our head. So men get blamed for that. But going back to Kemi Badenoch, she's completely right. Where are the fathers? Now, I don't completely blame the fathers. I blame the mothers and the fathers for this. and the government, by the way, because we started getting single parent mothers a lot from the 60s. What happened in the 60s? Well, we got the pill. So we got the number one birth contraception in the 60s, and then single parent mothers increased. And then we started looking at women with not much money raising children, and so we started subsidising their lifestyles, the government. And they wonder why more women went, oh, I'll have a bit of that. When I was growing up in the 80s, I knew girls who weren't going out to get pregnant per se, but they didn't care because I'll get a house, I'll be looked after. So we've rewarded women to make poor decisions, and then we wonder why more women make poor decisions, because we're financially incentivizing them to make those decisions. On the flip side, we need to look at the men. Paying single mums to look after their children, letting men walk away, was great for some men. Yeah. I can have sex now. I've got no responsibility. My children won't. I love my children, but they won't starve. The state's looking after them. So we gave weak men a way of walking away from their families, where it should have been social pressure saying, you used to have made a baby now. I don't care about your personal convenience. I don't care about how happy you are and you're not getting along. I don't care. The second you made a baby, used to went down the pecking order to number 2. Your baby's now pecking order number 1. Everything you do now for the next 18 years is about your child. That's your personal responsibility. But with feminism and with socialism and with weak men, they decided it affects my personal convenience. And then we started killing babies along the way because it's even easier.
Yeah. And interesting, the latest figures just revealed show that the birth rate in this country is now down to 1.44 per woman, which is the lowest since records began in 1938.
I'm not too worried about a declining population and birth rate. I'm really not. Technology will save us on this. But the first thing we need to do is end mass migration. Mass migration is not the answer to our declining birth rate. We had this when we had the Black Death. So the Black Death killed something like 3/4 of Europe. Maybe not as high as that, but some figures say 3/4. And suddenly, the average worker who was ploughing a field had choices. 9 people want me to plough their field, so I've tripled my wages straight away, and now I plough the fields that are the easiest fields to plough. And that's what gave some of the working people the power to start getting a better life. It also then led to other people who couldn't get people to plough their field to start inventing better ways to mechanically plough fields. I'm not saying straight away we didn't invent the factory in the 1300s, but when there's a shortage of workers, we're very creative, and that's what creates technology and new ways of doing things. All our farms now could be mechanised overnight, basically. I've had this conversation with before. There's machines now to pick strawberries, to pick carrots, that you just send the robots out into the fields. It does it all themselves. You don't need Eastern Europeans picking our fruit. We've got machines doing it all. Yeah. But why would you invest £1 million as a farmer to buy this machinery when you've got a constant supply of Eastern Europeans and Africans and Afghanis willing to pick your carrots and cabbages? You wouldn't. So mass migration is not the answer. We will find a balance, and we will start having more children when this is a better country to have children. So when it's a safer country.
And then that might be part of the reason people aren't having children.
I think it absolutely is.
Because they're looking and saying, what the hell am I bringing my kids into?
You can't afford housing. You can't get kids in good schools. You don't trust anybody. Crime's going out of control. People are being raped. You're not sure how secure your job is. Taxes are going up. And you wonder why people are going, we're only having 1 kid. We can't afford 2.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's one of the answers.
I think you're right.
If we can make our society a better society, and start building our society around the family, watch people have more children, because there's not a greater gift in this world than having and raising children, because they're part of you, and everything you do reflects upon them, and you can see them developing and learning to walk and learning to read, and being an adult and having their own children, and you've seen how they're raising them. It's all down to you because you sowed those seeds. That's the meaning of life. It isn't a flat screen TV. It's not a new BMW. It's not fantastic holidays. It's having children and raising them, and them having children and them having children. And when people are dying on their deathbeds, no one ever says, oh, I wish I had a few more years left in me so I could have got that Lamborghini. People don't say that. People say, I wish I'd spent more time with my son. I wish I'd not fallen out with my daughter. I wish I'd been a better husband, a better wife. That's what people regret on the deathbeds, because that's the most important thing. We don't, in our world at the moment, we're blinded by everything else.
Yeah.
And we've never been, religion used to remind us all the time about what was important. We have no religion anymore now. We had governments always talking about personal responsibility. It's down to you to look after your parents and stuff like that. We don't have that anymore now. So we've lost all our personal responsibility, and we're living in this pleasure dome. And have you read a book called, it's Oxley, Brave New World?
Brave New World, Aldous Huxley.
Yeah. So that's all about pleasure.
Yes.
And I think that's what we've turned into now. None of us are happy. We're all on drugs. We're all trying to get as much sex as possible. And it's all about consumerism. And none of us are happy.
On that note, Buckley, drugs, sex and rock and roll.
Yes.
We'll end this edition 50 of The Mayor and I. Please, ladies and gentlemen, thumbs up.
Like, subscribe, thumbs up, comment, have a conversation.
Yeah.
Speak to Lindsay. I go a bit through the comments, but you're on the comments more than
I like
me.
the comments, I like to read the comments,
Yeah.
So, please get those comments coming. Great.
Cheers.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers, I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.